If all you do is sit in front of people and have the same 3 to 5 products that get you fat commissions, and you have one goal, and it's to sell insurance,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you are not a financial advisor. You're not. You are an insurance salesman. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Fisher.
And I'm Dave Fisher. We're a husband and wife team of certified financial planners, and together we make up Team Fisher Financial. Welcome to our new series we're calling And Money.
As both a concept and an object, money is a prevalent component of our world and intersects with so many areas of our lives.
By the nature of our job as CFPs, our days are filled with constant conversations around money. Conversations we think are vital for people to consider and understand for their financial universe and beyond.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back again to another episode of And Money. And today we are going to talk about what we have decided to call industry and money. So we are certified financial planners. My name is Lauren Fisher, and to my right is my husband, Dave Fisher. So we are a husband and wife couple. We work together as planners. And one of the things that we see on a regular basis is people don't really have, it's not common knowledge for how our industry works.
Right.
What it means to be a financial advisor, the fact that that word can mean a lot of different things depending on who you're sitting across the table from.
Right.
So we wanted this episode to be pretty much kind of informational, educational, so that people can arm themselves with a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding to be able to make a really well-informed decision about what it looks like to actually work with a financial advisor. So let's start, before we get into all of the data and all of the info, let's give a little background on both of us for people who maybe knew what our roles are, what it means for us when we say financial advisor.
Yeah. So we are certified financial planners. That was a big key for me. Always wanting to do what's in my client's best interest. So when somebody says financial advisor, a little background on me is I actually interviewed with a firm. It's back in, had to be like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole process, I really had this inkling in the back of my mind, like, this is interesting. I love this topic. I don't like financial advisors. I don't like them. I feel like they're just trying to squeeze money out, or they're trying to really cover a lot of different things, make it a little opaque of the whole process, right? I didn't want to operate in that capacity. I really wanted to be very clear, very transparent. What is the plan? What is the goal? And help people. So I actually said no when I first started the interview process. It was only a couple years later that I was influenced in a way to actually move toward that direction. But even then, I got into the industry and I had no clue what was up.
Yeah.
Like, no one was telling me the ins and outs of how things worked. You had to go online to really find anything to do with it. But my goal was always like, how do I do this for my clients? How do I be the best version of myself? So I did a lot of digging to find out, what does this look like? Am I where I should be? Right? How does this whole framework work together to benefit my clients in the best way possible?
Yeah, you did a lot of research. And we met even before someone tried to recruit you the first time to be an advisor when you were still in the tech world. We were hit up by a lot of advisors.
Yeah.
And we left every meeting feeling like somebody was just trying to sell us something.
Right.
And my foray into it, you had been in the industry for about 5 years when I decided to make a career change. I was in the hedge fund world for many years and wanted to do something different. And through a series of a lot of conversations, we decided that this might be something for me too. And one of my, not just getting to work with you, not just getting to help people, but one of my personal reasons and something that pushed me internally was every time, and I have a feeling I'm probably not the only woman who's experienced this, every time we would sit down with one of those advisors, they always looked at you.
Mm.
They always talked to you.
Yeah, it's true.
They would ask you a question. And if I knew
About
the answer
you.
about me,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting in the room, I mean,
Yeah.
it was like I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was spoken to, it was patronizing.
Yeah.
There was an assumption that you were the only one who knew anything about finances. I remember one guy, do you remember? You probably don't remember this. I remember one guy just assumed that I didn't know what a stock was and decided
Was this when you were working at the hedge fund? Or is this right before? I can't
this
remember.
was
That was Sally.
this was
Yeah.
when I was still in the finance
Yeah.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't specifically working for a hedge fund, but yeah, just assumed that I'm my pretty little brain must not know what a stock is. So let me help you. And
Great experiences. All of
such
them.
great experiences. And we had a lot of talks about, women only make up, I think it's around 25% right now of all advisors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a massive wealth transfer that's happening between generations, and there's a big gender shift too, where women are going to be controlling, I forget the number, it's somewhere around, I want to say $30 trillion in wealth by 2045, somewhere around there. That number might not be exactly accurate, but I wanted to be able to be a voice for women, and not just women, but that always stuck with me of I'm here too. And just not assuming that, my husband is handling all the money and I can just sit here and just listen.
Sounds great. What a great life.
What a great life. So we both, I mean, there was a lack of trust.
Yes.
There was frustration in, some discrimination and just some assumptions that were unfairly made by people. And so we both kind of came into it saying we really want to do this and we want to approach this differently.
Yeah.
And we had, when we were launching Team Fisher Financial, we had a lot of conversations around what does this look like, not only to do this with excellence and to know our stuff, because that's like number one.
Of course.
That's number two. Number one is care for people. Number two is know your stuff, but also it's how do we kind of push back on some of the frustrations, would you call it frustrations, that we have with the industry?
Yeah, we might get on a few soapboxes today.
I know there's some coming. There's some coming because there's some stuff about our industry that people don't talk about that needs to be brought up, that needs to be discussed, and clients and anybody making a decision about who to work with their finances deserves to have an understanding of these things.
I mean, these are things we're going to talk about today that I didn't know basically a year into the career. So it's good information. Hopefully even advisors tune in and maybe early in their career, they're like, oh, that's how things work. Okay, great. But we don't get to just brush with a broad paintbrush or whatever the term is. That's an incorrect term. But
paint with a broad brush.
There it is. Paint with a broad brush. But one thing I do know is that there are good people in this industry in all facets of it. But generally speaking, we want you to have a clear understanding of how things actually work.
Yeah. And so we are going to paint kind of broadly as we walk through this, but quality advisors are everywhere.
Yes.
The thing is, one of the biggest pieces to take away, and we'll talk about it at the end, some questions that you can ask anybody you are or may work with.
Yeah.
A quality advisor should have absolutely no issue with you asking those questions and with answering those questions with complete transparency and clarity, where you feel comfortable at the end of the conversation.
That it hasn't been rehearsed over and over and over again.
Or that it's, sidestepped and we go back to sales techniques and all of those things. Because honestly, it's good to have accountability, and sometimes it's good to have your feet held to the fire.
Right.
And if an advisor gets squeamish about that, that might be a little bit of a red flag. So we're gonna start walking through this,
Yeah,
and
let's unpack this a
we're gonna
bit.
start with the different areas of the industry,
Okay.
because you can say I'm a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what type of firm do you work for?
Oh yeah, there are
Is
lots of different
there's a
types.
lot, and we kind of
Yeah.
broke it down into 4.
Mm-hmm. So wirehouses,
Mm-hmm.
these are institutions you've definitely heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a Merrill Lynch, it's going to be Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan Chase, like big, big firms. They have so many resources. It's unbelievable, like how many analysts they have for an individual stock, right? And they put together these crazy portfolios of their own mutual funds sometimes, but crazy
Mm-hmm.
portfolios to get clients into a good position. Now, their goal is to keep their money, your money there, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's honestly everybody's goal, but
Mm-hmm.
they make it a little stickier.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll put you in proprietary products or different things that it's just harder to transition out of. And you might have a large gain on it. And if you wanted to go anywhere else, you'd have to sell that and assume that large gain, right? And pay
Right.
taxes on it. So those are things that they'll do internally. They also do a lot of cross selling. So
Explain what that is.
it's when you bring somebody in and they open an account with you,
Mm-hmm.
you want to also sell them all these other products that you have internally. And many of these wirehouses are connected to big banks now. So like I already said, JP Morgan, Bank of America bought Merrill back in the great financial crisis. Like
Yeah. Like
all,
right before Lehman crashed, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's very interesting to look at it where they're like, hey, we roped him in on something else. Here's 5 other things that we can impart to you.
Mm-hmm.
There a lot of them are doing good work, but that's what you're gonna get working at a wirehouse typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might see they'll have kind of triggers internally where you have, let's say you have a bank account with them. If that bank account hits a certain,
Usually 500 to a million,
mhm,
500,000
yeah, a
to a
certain
million.
balance,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're getting someone from their private wealth team
Yeah.
calling, or if you have a big deposit,
Mhm.
they'll that kind of trigger stuff internally
Yeah.
to, like you said, keep you in their.
You have a banker that knows all this
Mhm.
stuff and then it connects with the financial advisor on the other side. So they have a good relationship. And that's how they keep a lot of these assets internal
Mhm.
and try to get people to do the right things and invest excess cash. But also it's just another way to keep people in their ecosystem.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And the next one is insurance.
Insurance companies.
That's where I started,
Yes.
the insurance side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the goal of an insurance company is typically to sell some sort of insurance product.
Like,
Like it's going to be life insurance. There are lots of different types of life insurance. You're going to have whole life, variable life, universal life, variable universal life. It just gets a little convoluted. And then annuities, right? And we don't need to go on into all the different types of annuities.
right.
But the primary goal is to sell insurance. And you do bring assets in house in some form or fashion, but typically it's to sell insurance right off the bat. The person selling the insurance, the advisor in this case, is earning a commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their whole goal is to sell this insurance, not necessarily to put you in the best position possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a combination, and we'll get into the broker dealer side. So you talk about
Well,
broker
before we go there,
dealers.
can you
Oh,
give
yeah.
give some examples? Like what big name insurance
Big
companies?
name insurance companies: New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, Prudential, Mass Mutual. Uh, Many of these companies actually may hold your 401k.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. There's a lot of crossover in that space, but they sell insurance products.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people need insurance products, but if your primary goal as an advisor is to sell insurance products, you likely are not receiving the best advice.
Well, that's because there is an inherent conflict of
Mm-hmm.
interest with commissionable products
Yes.
that they are actually required to disclose. A lot of times that disclosure comes in like a 200 plus page
Who's going to read
document that
this?
you
Come
sign,
on.
but they do have to legally disclose. There's an inherent conflict of interest when you have two options for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
One piece of advice is you're not really contributing to your 401k. Let's put more of your dollars towards that versus here's this insurance product that I sell and have sold to pretty much everyone I sit in front of, and I get a nice fat commission from it.
Yeah.
And I can have you put excess money in this
Mm-hmm.
investment vehicle that makes me a lot of money.
Yeah.
This over here
makes you nothing
doesn't
because
really
you're
help
not
me.
managing their 401k.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This over here does make me money.
Mm-hmm.
So there, as human beings, you just have to, you can be the person of highest integrity in the world, but there's still an inherent conflict of interest in making that decision between which of these two things should I push to a client. I'll hold my tongue on that till a little bit later, but I think I'll just say this and I'll expand on it later with insurance companies. And like we've said, they're great people at insurance companies. But if all you do is sit in front of people and have the same 3 to 5 products that get you fat commissions, you're not looking at anyone funding maxing out their 401k, looking at IRAs, looking at backdoor Roth or mega backdoor Roth or anything like that. And you have one goal, and it's to sell insurance. Yeah. I'm sorry, you are not a financial advisor. You're not. You are an insurance salesman. But because our industry does not regulate, really, it barely regulates who can be called a financial advisor, there's no delineation. Yeah. There's no way to tell just from someone's LinkedIn or their business card or whatever. If they say they're a financial advisor, they very well could just be a person who hawks product and gets fat commission checks and does not care about what happens to you. I'll leave it there for now.
Moving on to broker dealers. Tell me about broker dealers.
So we've got wirehouses, we've got insurance companies. Then there are broker dealers. That's going to be, those are still recognizable, not as big names, but maybe Edward Jones, Raymond James, LPL.
They're starting to do a big push.
Yeah. And more I've like they want to get. Yeah. Ameriprise is another one that people have heard of. So in its most basic sense, a broker dealer facilitates buying and selling securities. And so that they hold a very necessary role. But a lot of how they make money is either through trading fees. But there's
starting to go away, but yes, especially for loads on different products that they would sell instead of institutional shares.
Right. So they'll do that. And they also, again, will push commission-based products. And a lot of times what you see are hybrid firms.
Yes.
So you've got someone who is an RIA, which we'll talk about in just a second, that's attached to a broker dealer. So there is an element of a fiduciary responsibility, which a lot of people have heard that word, don't actually know what that word means. Fiduciary just means you have to do what's in the best interest of your client. People assume that people assume everyone who calls themselves an advisor is a fiduciary. It's actually not true. But there is this
like some numbers behind that one.
Yeah. There is a like fiduciary arm. And then they also are attached to a broker dealer.
We called it hats whenever I was at the insurance company. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You wear one hat as the fiduciary, where you're giving investment advice, and that is regulated by lots of different firms, 1940 Act and
FINRA, SEC,
ERISA,
Securities Act,
just giving investment advice in over and over again gives you that fiduciary hat. But then you would take that off and sell insurance. In the same way, broker dealers, that hybrid model, many times they're operating sometimes as a fiduciary if they're operating under that IAR hat or RAA, how people want to determine that, or if they're selling a product.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you probably never said, I'm going to put my fiduciary hat on now. I'm going to take it off and not be a fiduciary anymore. I highly doubt
people would think you're a little crazy.
Yeah. Well, I highly doubt anybody would be that transparent if that's how it's being talked about. And so that's very common.
Mm-hmm.
But we're starting to see more people detach from that hybrid model
Yeah.
and do a straight RIA model. So RIA stands for Registered Investment Advisor.
Yes.
And that's confusing because you're a financial advisor within an RIA. We like to use the word advisor a
And
lot.
we are IARs inside of the
Yes,
RIA.
an
Well, lots
IAR
of
is.
acronyms. Yep.
We love acronyms in
Yes, we do.
finance.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of crazy. But basically, an RIA, they're going to be more focused on assets under management,
Mm-hmm.
more focused on providing holistic financial planning services.
Yes.
And we feel the way that the industry is going, which is a really good development and a good move, is that RIAs are starting to really look at holistic planning and bringing in house, which is a lot of what we do. You know, you've got tax planning, tax compliance,
Mm-hmm.
meaning you're doing strategy, you're also helping file. There's estate planning, there's risk management, there's investment management, and all of it is looked at holistically. It's not like, okay, I have my tax person over here, got my estate person over here. This guy handles my money, and none of them talk to each other.
Which is how it
even
used
though,
to be.
even though, and still is for a lot of
Yeah.
people, even though all of these inform one another.
Exactly.
But in terms of the way that RIAs are paid, especially ones that are not hybrid, really steer away from commission-based products. And they'll do, you know, we have AUM fees, more
Assets under management.
assets under
Another
management, another
acronym. There
acronym.
we go.
More people are starting to do kind of a consulting subscription model, which we've done in the past for people where it's, you know, you do a monthly, it's almost kind of a retainer.
Yeah.
It's a quarterly, monthly, it may be on a different cadence. And a lot of times that's for people who don't have a lot of liquid assets. You know, maybe they're in real estate, or maybe their money is tied up in their business, but they have the income where they want that high level financial
that
care.
white glove care
or there's hourly fees, so it's a lot more based on like a percent of something, or
getting paid on the work you're doing,
as opposed to
just selling, hawking product,
front loading and hawking a product. And so those are kind of the four general areas, and there's
nuances, there's combinations of these.
Yes. But those are kind of the four general buckets where you're going to find where you're going to find people who call themselves financial advisors. So let's talk, pivoting back to that idea of a fiduciary, because like we said earlier, whether it's a wirehouse, an insurance company, a broker dealer, an RIA, a hybrid combo of any of those things,
right?
Most people would assume that regardless of where that person is, they're going to have your best interest in mind. You would hope.
Yeah.
But the CFP board did a survey last year and found that almost 97% of Americans agree. 97% of Americans agree
on what?
that financial professionals, and this was specifically talking about retirement advice, but that financial professionals providing retirement advice should be required to act in their client's best interest. This country can't agree on anything, and yet we have 97% agreement that if you're telling me what to do with my retirement dollars, you absolutely should be legally required to have my best interest in mind.
Yes. From my perspective, the fact that so many people think this is how the industry works, but it doesn't work that way,
right,
puts a lot of people in bad positions. So they're talking to somebody, they may think the world of them. You know, they love the client, different client appreciation events, and maybe they go out and play golf with them once a month. Like, but do you actually know if your advisor is working in your best interest? It's kind of like going to a doctor. You have a major surgery coming up, you're likely going to go get a second opinion. Usually people talk to advisors when they have major life changes. What we typically see is retirement's coming up. They don't know what to do. They're nervous. They want to see how would distributions work, how do taxes work. Maybe there's an inheritance, or they have an aging parent and would want to
Yeah.
make sure that they're in the best hands possible. Widows, especially, maybe like what you're talking about, is widows that weren't given the opportunity to learn about money,
Mm-hmm.
and they need somebody that they can trust. Well, unfortunately, it's very hard for people to find out who to trust out
Yeah.
there without doing your own homework.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of a side note to that, but
Yeah.
a little side tangent to this, but it reminded me what you just said. Um, if you look back over the course of like American laws and regulations,
Mm.
it wasn't until it was either 1974 or 1976 where
Not 75.
nope, it was 74 or 76. Can't remember which
Is
one.
this ERISA or is this?
No,
Oh,
this was when women were allowed to open a credit card
mm,
without their husband or father co-signing or being involved.
wow.
When my mom was in her 20s. So one generation previous to us,
Yeah.
that and that's part of why there's this ridiculous assumption that I wouldn't know
Hmm.
what a stock is and that you're handling all the finances. And some of that's generational and some of it, I'm not trying to make some commentary on like personal decisions around like money management among
Hmm.
couples. I'm just saying like we have to be understanding of where we've come from
Yeah.
just societally and from a regulatory perspective,
Hmm.
especially when we're meeting with, we've met with a handful of widows
Yeah.
who are just scared
Hmm.
because they're like, what I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
um
I mean, I even met with a senior couple last week, and she's just talking about identity protection and making sure that
mm-hmm.
she's doing the right things online. That's not a financial conversation. That's a person to person, how can I help my clients in the best way possible
Yeah.
conversation. But many people don't have a trusted resource that they can just ask these questions to. And let alone somebody that actually has the experience and the expertise to give them wise answers.
Or is meeting with them on a regular basis. That's
Hmm.
another one
Yeah.
that's that's not as common as it should be. Is, especially if you're sold a product and all of a sudden you can't get a hold
Yeah.
of an advisor to save your life, or you're handed off to a paraplanner or
Hmm.
somebody else in the organization who doesn't know anything about your situation,
Yeah.
and they're just kind of reading some basic data on a screen. How, like, that relational aspect, how are you supposed to be able to trust that whoever's handling this money now can also help you with things that are not specific to investments or taxes, but can have very real
Yeah.
consequences? And some of it is just helping assuage fear for
Hmm.
people and putting basic things in place, like, hey, let's talk about a password manager,
Right. Yeah.
basic things like that.
Hmm.
So,
Well, you were talking about even just how people can give one-time advice,
mm-hmm,
right? They get a commission and then they move on. There's lots of different regulations I've been trying to get past, but even in 2023, there was one where there's actually five, and I'm not going to read them off, but there are five different, it's a 5-part test to determine who's a fiduciary, right?
mm-hmm,
And what they were trying to do was reduce it so that it was anybody that receives a fee for financial advice, no matter over a prolonged or a short term period of time. So it
whatever
could be a
kind of,
one
yeah.
time piece of advice. Now you are considered a fiduciary on the investment side. So that would qualify. Now, if anybody's trying to sell a product, they would have to be a fiduciary and do what's in the client's best interest and not just suitable for them.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, and we're talking about it now, that hasn't been passed. So
Yeah.
where anytime we try to move the needle forward and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that clients' interests are protected, government tends to slow down, get in the way because of lobbyist groups.
Yeah, that's another one. I think that you bring up a really interesting point, and you actually found
Hmm.
that breakdown of money spent by like different
Industry.
industries
Yeah.
and different types of lobbyists. I think if it'd be interesting to just like go ask people on the street, like, what companies, what industries do you think spend the most on lobbying?
I feel like they would get the first one.
Which is,
Pharma.
yeah,
Yeah, big pharma.
big pharma. Big pharma does big lobbying.
I forgot what number 2 was on the list. But number 3.
Number 3, I bet people wouldn't guess that number 3 is insurance companies.
Yeah.
Some of that includes health insurance companies.
Oh, yeah.
But because it's lumped in together. But it's also life insurance companies, broker dealers, people who have a vested interest in terms like financial advisor
Mm-hmm.
being very broad, in things like fiduciary standards not being very high.
Right.
Because if that happened, then it would cut into the billions and billions of dollars that they make on commissionable products that so many people don't need.
Right.
So just because someone says they're a financial advisor does not mean they have your best interest at heart,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they even really know finance. Truly. They might know annuities and universal life and whatever else backwards and forwards and can talk to you about that for days on end.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I've said this before, do they know what's happening with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the big, beautiful bill that's passed the House and is now in the Senate, and how that would affect your finances? How that would affect the taxes on that life insurance policy that they're trying to send to you? Do they know the rules about IRAs, 401ks, if you're a business owner, a solo 401k?
With this, the last thing I wanted us to talk about were just rapid fire questions
Okay.
about the industry or about the practice, and how do we operate in response.
So you mean questions that somebody should ask
Mm-hmm. To their advisor.
to their advisor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So I'm going to start. Are you primarily a financial planner or an investment advisor? Are you focused solely on investments, or are you considering all aspects of a person's financial world?
Super easy one. We just talked about it.
Mm.
I am a holistic financial planner.
Yep.
Investments are a very important piece. We
Mhm.
talked last week about time and money and the
Yeah.
power of compounding and the necessity of investing.
Right.
But that is one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Mm.
One of my focuses and areas of expertise that I'm continuing to work on and always want to learn in is taxes. Taxes, I've said it a million times and I'll say it a million more. Taxes is one of the most corrosive elements of investments, of business.
Yeah.
And so there are legitimate legal things that people can do, a lot of times very simple to implement if you know
Yeah.
what you're doing, to help with that.
Mhm.
Another is estate. And it's not just let's keep things out of probate because probate is a nightmare.
Right.
And let's think through the estate.
It can be a nightmare, that's for sure.
Yeah. The estate tax threshold, but also the gifting threshold.
Mhm.
And also what legacy do you want to leave qualitatively?
Yeah.
What values do you want your kids to learn? That's one of the biggest concerns that people have. So I want to look at things when we sit down across the table from someone, whether it be a single guy, a single woman, a married couple, a widow, widower, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We're looking at it holistically because we care about you in totality. And so we have to care about your financial universe in totality.
Yes.
Ooh. Oh, they're right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you subject to a fiduciary standard, and in what way?
Yes. So in the way that we mentioned before, it's very interesting. We're investment advisors. So we are fiduciaries when we're giving investment advice.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to go well and above that, right?
Yes.
So the CFP board has their own standard. And we follow that. That's a fiduciary standard. And that defines everything that we do.
Every
so
client
any
interaction.
piece of advice, any recommendation we give, it is at a fiduciary level. That was very important to both of us. And a big reason I even got my CFP in the first place.
Yeah.
Both the knowledge aspect and the fact that we are full fiduciaries.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me ask you one. Do you have any disclosures on your personal record?
No, none.
What's a
That's
disclosure?
like let's explain what that means. So, every advisor who one thing about every advisor does have registration with FINRA. So we have, depending on what kind of work you do, you have like a Series 65 or whatever. But basically, it's public information, like your kind of career path, who you work for, all that, and you can go to FINRA's broker check website. I think it's brokercheck.org, right? I think I'll put it down below on the screen.
Yeah.
To make sure I'm not wrong. But you can go in, you can search by firm name, you can search by individual name, and you go by location, and you can go in and see if anybody has any disclosures, which means if FINRA has brought any sort of investigation or fines on that person.
Any complaints?
Sometimes, just because I'll caveat this, just because there's a customer complaint, I'd put that as like a light yellow flag.
Yeah.
Sometimes not every complaint is valid. Many complaints are, but not every complaint is valid. So if you dig into it, you can look. A lot of times it'll say, it was settled, there was no fault, or it'll say like,
well, we don't have any right now.
Anyway. We don't. Yes. But I'm just saying generally, if you ever saw any. Do you have any on yours?
No, I don't.
Okay. How do we get paid?
Our primary way we get paid are assets under management. So we earn a percentage of the assets that we manage. We also get to do a lot of fun things. We've done the subscription model for multiple clients, where we have higher net worth clients or business owners that need some white glove service. We also do a per hour. So we do for a plan effectively and help people get just on their way, right? They implement it themselves, figure out what they need to do. I love all of that. We also have the ability, I have an insurance license. Lauren does not.
I do not.
If we needed to provide insurance in any way, we can do that. But ultimately, it is very, very little of our overall amount that we make.
And that's what I was going to say. When you ask that, how do you get paid question?
Yeah.
A really important follow-up question is, are commission-based products a large part of or the majority of your business? Because, and again, if they sidestep, that's a flag.
Yeah, that's probably your answer.
Yeah. And our answer is no. It is a infinitesimal part of our business on purpose.
Yeah. Well,
whose turn is it?
I think it is. Is it my turn or is it your turn? We can answer this one together. Well, there are lots of questions in this one. Who's your typical client?
My typical client, we love working with all different kinds of people, but I specifically love working with business owners and entrepreneurs. I've talked about this before, but I have a long legacy of business owners on both sides of my family. That's what these pictures are over here. You can't see them, but it's what I see when I walk into our office. The first thing I see every morning is these pictures of businesses that were owned by my family.
Yeah.
Grandparents, parents, grandparents, great grandparents. And I take that legacy very seriously. And so one of the ways that I carry that on is not only as a business owner myself, but also working with business owners, because there are unique challenges and a lot of unique opportunities around that, especially with the financial planning piece and how that can open up so many more opportunities for you to grow your business and to keep your dollars where they can be most useful. Not with Uncle Sam, but in growing your business.
Well, and I'll say specifically, you love working with other female entrepreneurs.
That was going to be my next thing. Female entrepreneurs and women executives. We are so underrepresented in this industry and many others. Austin's a very tech heavy place. Once again, another very underrepresented place for women. And one of my favorite things is getting to help women succeed, help women feel super confident in the financial choices that they're making, and celebrate your wins with you. Because a lot of times we're told not to really celebrate. We're told to kind of just keep it down. Let's not keep it down. I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate loud with you by helping you make a plan.
That's great.
Your turn.
My turn. So I actually really enjoy working with folks that have transitioned to that retirement stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of pieces and moving pieces tied to it. They get to expand their lives in ways that they didn't know before, right? Or haven't experienced in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time with family, traveling, being more charitably inclined with their time too, not just their money.
Yes.
Those are things that are very valuable and really provide just a huge joy to see that. But there are also very difficult moments in that transition, and not just in the transition, but later on in life in that stage where we have to make hard decisions. We have to get home health care
Mm-hmm.
for a spouse. Like we have to decide how should the estate be managed,
Mm-hmm.
and come up with a very good plan, but around very hard subjects,
Yeah.
very difficult conversations to have. I find that for whatever reason, I have a gift to operate in those capacities. And there's a level of empathy that stands out, that comes out quite a bit in these conversations. So it's not for everyone.
No.
Many advisors wouldn't want to step into those situations, but I feel like I have the gifting and the empathy in order to step in well and serve these people
Yeah.
in that capacity. Yeah.
I 1000% agree with that. And the reason that we want to think through these questions and arm you with these questions, and I'm going to put the questions in the show notes. We're also going to put them up just on the screen if you're looking at the video, is so that you can feel confident leaving a discussion, leaving a conversation with anybody who is pitching you on their services,
Yeah.
whether it be us, whether it be somebody else, so that you can make an informed decision. And one of the things that we tell people, the pieces of advice we give when someone's like, "Hey, how do I choose an advisor?"
Yeah.
One of the things we say is after that first meeting, really check in with the level of trust you
Mm.
feel like you could build with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see yourself feeling comfortable
Yeah.
having really personal conversations, divulging a lot of information, because that's what's required
Yeah.
for a good plan. And a good barometer is like, if they didn't even ask you the most basic questions, how can you know if,
They're
like,
going to know the right questions to ask you later on.
exactly?
Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing with an advisor is even if they care, even if they know their stuff, and even if they're a fiduciary, if you don't feel like you can trust them, then whatever plan that they put in front of you, whatever recommendations they put in front of you, like, why would you take those?
Yeah.
So for the client, it really is like, can you see yourself trusting them?
Hmm.
And did they answer these questions with transparency, with clarity, and with honesty?
Couldn't say it better myself. My hope is that this video gives you just some great talking points, helps you understand maybe if you want a financial advisor, or you're looking at pursuing that option, or you're
Mm-hmm.
just not sure about your current one. You have some tools, right? This is
Yeah.
a way to leverage our knowledge, to benefit yourself. That was the whole goal of today.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Even if you're already working with an advisor, you can still ask these questions.
Yeah.
Like, there's no,
We
at
we
any
helped a
point.
friend get another financial advisor. We
Mm-hmm.
provided our list of questions to ask their potential new advisor,
Mm-hmm.
and to us, it was just a joy to help them feel even more confident after that
Yeah.
meeting that this is who they wanted to partner with.
Yeah. And I mean, we knew that our services weren't exactly, and kind of our niches weren't exactly
Yeah.
what they needed, but we still wanted them to land with someone
Hmm.
trustworthy and someone that they felt confident in. And
Exactly.
that's what we want to do for you too.
Yeah.
So we hope that this was helpful. I am really excited about next week. Next week we are talking about us and money.
Mm.
We record these about a week ahead of time before we publish, and we are going to record this just after our 13-year
Hmm.
anniversary.
Lucky number 13.
Lucky number 13. So we're going to talk about us and money. And our plan is, and I completely stole this from Adam Grant's podcast. Adam Grant is one of my favorite thought leaders. He has an amazing podcast called Rethinking. We are going to do what he calls a failure resume. And we're going to
So
talk
fun.
through all of the ways that we have failed with, mainly with our finances over maybe before marriage and over the past 13 years, and the lessons we've learned, and what it looks like for us as a married couple to work together. So I'm excited about that one.
It'll be fun.
It's going to be great. We'll see you next time.